Okay, let's move on then to the last part of the Ross chapter, and that is 19.5, and how to form questions. Okay, so go to page 145 in Ross, and let's look at these interrogative sentences. An interrogative is a question. Okay, let's real quickly think about English. English is like a lot of other languages. There's two ways to form questions in English. Okay, there's two types of questions. There are yes/no questions, and then there are what some people like to call content questions or WH questions. Okay, what's the difference between these? Oh, and another word for yes/no questions are polar questions. Now, let's talk about the two. A yes/no question is a question where the answer is either yes or no. That's the only appropriate response to the question. That's why they're called polar questions, because when you have things that are polar, there's two ends of the pole, right? So there's only two alternatives that are available to you, yes or no. Let's ask a yes/no question. Do you love Hebrew? There are two possible answers. Only one of them is correct. Yes. Okay, so you can either answer yes or no, right? There is no in between. Do you love Dr. Marshall? Yes or no? Yes. All right, amen and amen. Your A is coming in the mail. If you ask a yes/no question and somebody responds with something besides yes or no, communication has failed, or someone has succeeded in being a smart aleck. Okay? Do you love Hebrew? And my student says, blue. That means he's avoiding answering the question, or he's playing dumb, right? So those are yes/no questions. And in English, we can ask yes/no questions by taking a statement and then raising the intonation at the end of the statement. So I could have a statement like, I love Hebrew. Falling intonation, I love Hebrew. That's a statement of fact. It's not a question. But if my intonation goes up at the end of that, I love Hebrew? Now I'm asking a question, and of the sort that requires either a yes or a no for an answer. Okay? Content questions on, the other way to ask a yes/no question is to use do or does or did, and you put that in front of the main verb. So do you love Hebrew, or did you love Hebrew until today? Okay, and then you can answer that with a yes or a no. The way we ask content or WH questions is to use what are frequently our WH words. Who, where, when, okay, and so forth. All of those questions begin with WH, and that's why they're referred to in linguistics as WH questions. Or content questions, because what you're doing is you're asking a question where you're questioning some constituent where any answer could become the constituent any item could become a constituent in the answer. So if I say something like, who loves Hebrew? Who loves Hebrew? I'm questioning the subject constituent. What subject out there loves Hebrew? And the answer is not yes or no, right? The answer is John loves Hebrew, or Mary loves Hebrew, or Joseph loves Hebrew, okay? I'm just filling in that constituent slot with any content that would be appropriate as an answer. Where do we learn Hebrew? The answers could be Houston, Kansas City, Jupiter, and so forth. So with content questions in English, we're usually using WH forms of interrogatives, okay? Now, that's just a real basic introduction to English question asking, but hopefully it's going to set us up now for how Hebrew asks questions. And basically, in Hebrew, we have something similar. And the way Ross lays this out, he gives us the content questions first, okay? So Ross's layout introduces us to how to ask what we would call WH questions. And interestingly, in Hebrew, WH questions is really mem, okay? The letter mem begins the WH sorts of interrogative words that we use. So take the word for who, okay? Me is who. We learned that a long time ago, but now we get to actually see it officially as part of our lesson. That begins with a mem, doesn't it? The word ma is the word what? Okay? English interrogatives start with WH. Hebrew interrogatives like to start with mem. So ma is what? So if you said, what, ma? How would you say that in Hebrew? Ma, right? Ma. Okay. Using me as a question word is not difficult at all. You just basically put the me where you have the question within the sentence. So if I want to say something like, who are you? Me, ata, with the pronoun that's to ms. Okay? So me, ata. Who, literally this is who? You. Right? Remember the copula is going to be missing in Hebrew. So who you means who are you? And the answer is going to be some content. Billy, Ruth, Moses. Okay? Now, another interesting thing about me is I can attach prefixes to the me as part of my question. Because I might want to ask the question something like, to whom? So we'll just jot this down. Who are you is what me ata is. But I want to say, to whom did you go? All right? How am I going to ask that? I'm going to put a le in front of me, right? Le, me is who, and le, me is to who or to whom. And then you go is going to be a form of halach. You will assume that's to ms, halach ta. Okay? So lemi halachta. To whom you went is to whom did you go. Okay? So me could stand by itself. Me could have prepositions attached to it. And I could put any preposition there. I could say, in whom would be b'mi, right? Like whom, me, and so forth. Let's talk about the form what here. What? One thing we need to know is not just what it means, but how it is written in Hebrew. And here's the deal. Whenever you want to ask the question what's vowel pointing is going to be like the article hey. Okay? Well, how is the article hey pointed? I put hey, pathak, and doubling dot, dagesh forte, in the first consonant of the word that it's being prefixed to. What about ma? Well, if it's pointed like that, it's going to be pathak and then doubling dot. But here's the difference. There is going to be space in between ma and the word that comes immediately after the ma. I'm still going to put a dagesh forte in that first word, And it's going to be pronounced as if this were a closed syllable because that dagesh forte has to close the syllable. Okay? That dagesh forte has to close the syllable. So, let me give you an example here. Ma, and then zot. You guys remember what zay means? A demonstrative? It means this. Okay, zay is the masculine singular form of this. Zot is the feminine singular form. Okay, so I've got a dagesh forte in my zayin. Zayin, the word zay and zot normally doesn't have anything inside the zayin. It's not a begad kafat letter, so there shouldn't be any dagesh lene. And at the beginning of a word, you should never have a dagesh forte. Okay, so zayin shouldn't have any dots inside it at all. But when I say ma zot, that means what is this? Okay, what is this? Notice the is missing because the copula isn't used in Hebrew. I now have mazot with a dagesh forte in that zayin. What does that tell you? It tells you that this is to be pronounced as mazot. Okay? You might say, well, Dr. Marshall, how can I close a syllable when I have this hey stuck in between the mem and the pathak and the zayin? Well, here's the answer. Is that hey a real hey? No. A hey at the end of the word without a dot in it is a mater, isn't it? It is a fake hey. It is not real. It is a vowel marking hey. So, it isn't that hard, I suppose, to put a dagesh forte in the next word and to vocalize this as a closed syllable. Maz. Okay, so if I had to give you some kind of a transliteration here, it would be something like that. So, mazot. Mazot. Okay? There's a doubled zayin here. Mazot. So what is this? Mazot. That's, by the way, that's what God asks when he comes into the garden. What is this you have done? That's also what he asks Cain when Abel's blood is seeping into the ground. What is this you have done? Mazot. Okay, so if I have to put a dagesh forte here in the next consonant after the ma question for what, can you imagine that there are going to be some problems in writing that dagesh forte in some places? Yep. And the answer is going to be, what if my word begins with a guttural, right? If I have gutturals following ma, can I put a dagesh forte in the guttural? Nope. I'm going to see the dagesh forte rejected, right? And when it does reject it, I'm going to get all the same sort of forms of ma that I had with ha when it rejected the dagesh fortes. So remember how ha is normally pointed this way, but my alternate forms are to do ha with the compensatorily lengthened long A with no dagesh forte, or I could do ha with no dagesh forte but a short A, and this was the guttural was virtually doubled or implied doubling, or I could see hey with no dagesh forte, right? So these were my alternate forms of ha. And I am going to see the exact same sorts of things with ma. My normal pointing, ma with a dagesh forte following, but if I've got a guttural, I'm going to see these possibilities, okay? The exact same things, but with the dagesh forte gone. So those are my alternate forms of what? Okay? So I'm not going to require you to memorize exactly when you do one versus the other. The important thing here is that if you see ma in any of these forms, what does it mean? It means what? That's all you need to know. Okay? Now, the chapter will tell you when you can expect which one, and that's it's actually very similar to this. So if I have a resh or an ayin, I'm going to see a resh or an aleph. I'm going to see the this form, and then if I have the ayin, chet, or hey, I'm going to see this form, and then if I have some of the gutturals that have a kametz under them, then I'm going to see the segol hey here. So I'm not going to walk through all those forms, nor am I going to require you to memorize them. Okay, now you know how we have WH words that ask questions in English: who, what, where, when, why. There's one more WH word that's not really a WH word in English. It's the odd man out. It's the one that doesn't start with WH. Which one is it? How. That's right. So there are some interrogatives that don't follow the pattern, right? So how's one. And in Hebrew, we also have some interrogatives that don't follow the M pattern. Okay? So let's take a look at a couple of those. But if I write the word lama like this, there's a dagesh forte inside that mem here. Okay? What am I looking at here? This looks like the preposition lamed plus the word what, just pointed a little bit specially, and the accent being on the lamed here. I taught Greek yesterday. So this almost looks like you could translate it as lamed is for, and ma is what. If I say for what does that mean? You did that for what? Or you did that what for? Right? That equals why, doesn't it? Why did you do that is what did you do that for? Or what did you do that for is why did you do that? Okay? So lama just means what for or why. And it is using a form of our mem interrogative. It's just adding a lamed preposition to it. So that's okay. So why did you do this? Lama asitha zot. Now, afo is one that is not using a mem, but still is an interrogative word. Afo. Afo. And this is where? Okay? Where? Afo. So if I want to say, where did you go? Afo halakta. Okay, halakta is you went. Afo halakta, where you went, meaning where did you go? Where did you go? All right, so that's how you use that. Fairly easy. Now, the last thing in the lesson is how to ask yes-no questions in Hebrew. And to do that, we are going to use something that I think the book calls it as well, the interrogative hey. Okay? And the interrogative hey is a hey prefixed with vowel pointing that looks like this. Okay? What kind of a vowel point is that under the hey? That is a compound shiva. A compound shiva. That's how we're going to see this interrogative hey. Pointed with a compound shiva, and the interrogative hey will be prefixed to the first word of the question. So if you look at lo shamar et haTorah, this is not he keep or kept, not he kept et haTorah, the Torah. So this is he did not keep the Torah or law. Okay, so that's a statement of fact. Lo shamar et haTorah. Now, what if I take this affirmative sentence and I add a ha to the first word with the compound shiva? Now what have I done? What is this I have done? I have converted this to a question, right? And there's two ways to ask this question. I could leave the statement the way it is and have a rising intonation at the end. He did not keep the law? Now that's a yes-no question, right? He did not keep the law? Or I can reorder my words, and when I do that, I've got to put the word did where?
At the beginning.
It's got to go at the beginning, exactly. So it's going to be, did he not keep the law? Either way, I need a question mark now. Okay? So he did not keep the law, or did he not keep the law? Okay? All right. So that's fairly easy, right? Just whenever you see an interrogative hey at the beginning of the word, if you bracket out or remove that interrogative hey for a second, then you're going to have an affirmation, a statement of fact, and then the interrogative hey just converts that statement of fact to a yes-no question. Okay? All right. Now, that's point number one under the discussion in Ross. Point number two, you have some gutturals, and you want a word that begins with a guttural or vocal shava, and you're adding the interrogative hey. The form of it is going to become a full vowel instead of the compound shava. Okay? So as an example here, he gives you the word ata, which again is you, right? And if I want to say ha ata, then it's going to be pointed with the full vowel here. Now let's erase that and just leave the pathak there, and there we go. Okay, so ha'ata would be translated as you, right? And the answer would be yes or no. Ha'ata. Okay, and then the last situation is where the interrogative hey could also be pointed as a segal. And those are going to happen in situations where I've got a guttural following, and the guttural has a kametz or a kametz katuf. So, example, amar. There's a guttural, it has a kametz. Okay, so instead of ha-amar, it becomes he-amar. And amar is simply he said statement. He-amar, with the interrogative hey, is he said or did he say? Okay, so let me just highlight these. These are the forms of the interrogative hey. Now, what's my problem here? My problem here is that this does look a lot like the article, doesn't it? Articles get prefixed to the beginning of words. How will I know whether or not I'm looking at the article versus whether I'm looking versus the interrogative hey? Well, the article is pointed how? That's right. Pathak, doubling dot, right? Interrogative hey. So we're just talking with ideal conditions. Compound shava, no dagesh forte. Okay, so you see the difference there? Article, under ideal conditions, has a dagesh forte and a full pathak. Interrogative hey, compound shava, no dagesh forte. So that's going to be the saving grace most of the time. But when I'm dealing with gutturals, all right, when I'm dealing with gutturals, both of these have the possibility of becoming ambiguous, because I could have a ha with no dagesh forte with a guttural, and the interrogative hey could look like that as well. I could have a he with no dagesh forte for the article, and the interrogative hey could become that as well. So this is where the ambiguities are possible. Okay? Here's the thing. Where does the interrogative hey go? Which word? Yeah, the interrogative hey is going to be prefixed to the first word of the question. So take a look at hello as an example here. You might go, well, I wonder if that's the article. There's two things that will tell you this is not the article. One is the pointing, right? The ha doesn't have a pathak and there's no doubling dot in the lamed. An article would have had that. Secondly, is there any reason why you would put an article on the negative particle lo, which means not? Would you ever say the not? No. Articles go where? Articles go on nouns. They go on adjectives. Okay? They could go on participles, but they won't go on other parts of speech. Whereas an interrogative hey can go on anything that's the first word of the question. And so you'll see the interrogative hey attached to things that you would never, ever, ever attach an article to. And so really the most important thing in telling the difference is to actually try translating the word with the ha in front of it as if it were the article and see if it would even make sense. And most of the time it won't. All right.